Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us at the How to Be a Successful SPUR Applicant Information Panel. My name is Sarah Hamilton. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm an academic advisor with the Rausser College of Natural Resources and SPUR Fall and Spring Coordinator. I will be serving as the moderator for this session. Also assisting me with the moderation of this session will be our Rausser College Curriculum Planner and Summer SPUR Coordinator, Temple Byers, and another Rausser College Academic Advisor, Anna Hoehenrieder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Temple Byers, and I do the scheduling for Rausser College and also curriculum building and, of course, Summer SPUR. And we're so happy you're here. Thank you.
Hi, and I'm Anna Hoehenrieder. I advise the undeclared and the molecular environmental biology students, and I'll be helping also with the hosting of this event.
Great, thank you, Anna and Temple. To start us off, I would like to discuss with you the outline for today's information session before introducing our panelists. As you can see, you have all been muted. This has been done to prevent background noise from entering the session, as well as prevent too many people from talking at once. In addition, please consider turning off your webcam to save bandwidth and prevent lag. After we introduce our panel and go through some basic information about the SPUR program, we will open the Q&A feature and you can send us your questions. Anna, Temple, and myself will be monitoring the questions and we will direct them to the panel in an orderly fashion. We expect all participants to abide by the UC Berkeley principles of community so that we can maintain a safe, caring, and humane environment, and we'll be removing individuals who violate these principles. Lastly, we will be recording the session and Q&A log. Now that we've gotten all the logistics out of the way, I'd like to introduce our four panelists. Joining us, Professor Ben Blackman, Claire Dubin, Jessica Heigas, and Megan Musoki. Panelists, please introduce yourselves and share a little about your interaction with the SPUR program. We can start with Professor Ben Blackman and then go in alphabetical order.
Hi everyone, I'm Ben Blackman. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Plant and Microbial Biology, and my lab studies how plants adapt to their local environments and how crops were domesticated. And I've been interacting with the SPUR program since my first semester on campus 5 years ago. And I think we've probably hosted somewhere around 25 SPUR, 30 SPUR students in my lab over time since we've been here.
Hi, I'm Claire. I graduated from CNR last year. I majored in microbiome, and I worked in Rachel Brem's lab on a SPUR project, and after graduating, I now work there full-time. Her project is called Genetic Dissection of Trait Variation Between Long Diverged Species, and I've done both wet lab and computational work on that project, looking into thermotolerance in yeast.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Heigas. I did my master's at Berkeley and now I'm a rising second year PhD student in the College of Natural Resources. I am in Kate O'Neill's lab, so we focus on waste. This is global waste, it's generation of waste, waste disposal, where it goes, how we can fix it through various policies and infrastructural economic levers and so forth. We started with SPUR last fall, and our project is called Single-Use Disposable Plastics, Measuring the Impacts of the Berkeley Ordinance. And so just in general, our SPUR projects really focus on how do we improve waste systems and shift towards zero waste.
Hi, I'm Megan Musoki. I'm a postdoc in environmental science policy and management, and I'm under the mentorship of Jennifer Sauerwein. Our lab specifically looks at the relationship between food security and traditional foods in indigenous and rural communities. And we're specifically working with tribes in far north California in the Klamath River Basin. And during my postdoc, this is my 6th year as a postdoc, and we've worked with SPUR students throughout my postdoc, and I've had the opportunity to mentor them and involve them in our research, and it's been really fruitful for me and others in our lab.
Great, thank you. I just want to start by giving us a quick overview of the SPUR program. The Sponsored Projects for Undergraduate Research Program encourages faculty and undergraduate students in the Rausser College of Natural Resources to collaborate on research projects by providing a grant to support their joint project. The funding for the program is generously donated, there are my dogs, generously donated by Rausser College alumni. Students may participate in the SPUR program by applying to the faculty-initiated projects or by creating student-initiated projects. The panel will be highlighting how to navigate applying to faculty-initiated projects. Currently, students can submit their applications for up to 3 faculty-initiated projects between now and August 31st at 5 p.m. We have a mix of in-person and remote projects this semester. To apply, you will need a resume, a personal statement, and an unofficial transcript. Thanks.
Thank you, Temple. We have a couple of questions we want to start off with, and I'm going to list them all now so that you as the audience can start thinking about them. The Q&A feature is also open, so you may start submitting your questions as well. First, what was your first experience with research, and how have you built confidence within the field since? Second, how can a student without prior research experience stand out in an application? And third, what does mentorship look like in your lab? Do SPUR students work with the faculty or primarily with the postdocs and graduate students? So let's start with question 1. What was your first experience with research, and how have you built confidence within the field since? Ben, would you like to start us off?
Sure, I can do so. So my first research experience was during, I think I got started with research just after winter break, my sophomore year of college. And I was working in a paleontology lab where they had these collections of owl pellets from caves in Yellowstone that had built up in these caves over hundreds to thousands of years. And in those owl pellets, of course, were lots of bones of small vertebrates that had been eaten by the owls over time. And so my job was to go through those owl pellets and remove the bones from the stones, from the sticks, from the poop, so that we could get the bones, and then those would then be measured and looked at both in terms of their traits as well as their DNA, to look at trends over time, over that 100 to 1,000 year period, and how those trends related to climate or other factors. Yeah, so, but I never got to the trait measurement or DNA part of it. I was just separating things. It was a good experience because it confirmed for me that I wanted to be in research, but it also confirmed for me that I didn't necessarily want to be doing that sort of research. I would rather be outside doing field work or actually at the bench, working with DNA or RNA or working with live organisms. And so since then, in college, I did several other research experiences that led to an honors thesis. And then I worked as a research tech for a couple of years before then going on to grad school. And all along the way, figured out through those experiences what parts of science I was most passionate about and most enjoyed doing, as well as building my skills as someone, as a scientist who can identify interesting questions and develop experiments to test hypotheses to answer those questions.
So my first research experience was my sophomore year at Cal. I was still in LNS at the time, so I joined their version of SPUR, and it was in an IB lab. And the project I worked on focused on the microbiome around the roots of legumes in Marin County. So we looked at both invasive legumes and natives to see how the microbiome was changing. But similarly to what Ben said, my role was very technical. It was to take the root samples and pick sand off of them with tweezers. And I did that for about 6 hours a week. So that was my first experience with research, and I didn't really love it. But then I switched to SPUR once I switched to CNR, and the approach that this lab took was getting the undergrads really involved in research. And that was very difficult for me at first because I felt like I was just doing everything wrong. But the way that I built confidence was to just keep trying and asking a lot of questions and not being afraid to bother people with my questions, because I realized that the expectations for undergrads are that we don't know a lot. So yeah, over time, I just became more confident in my ability to ask the right questions and interpret results. And yeah, and now I do research full time.
So I went to a small liberal arts for undergrad and did not have a lot of opportunity to do research in that setting. It wasn't until my senior year for my thesis that I really did research, and I oversaw my own research, which was terrifying. And I thought what I learned in the classroom of the methodology and how it actually is conducted and then fulfilled data collection, data cleaning, analysis, it just seemed so formulaic and so straightforward and easy. And then when I actually did it myself, that couldn't have been further from the truth. Like, it was just very messy, very chaotic. So many questions arose. And so overall, I felt like I was kind of misinformed or misguided, and it was just not easy or fun. So one thing that I've kind of learned to gain confidence in research is just really embrace the messiness, especially I'm coming from a social science background where there can be a lot of messiness, and just kind of lean into that and have the flexibility to kind of see where some of this qualitative work will go, or recognize that even some of the quantitative stuff will need to be iterated on and take different routes. But going off of kind of what Claire was saying, is just recognizing that I or anyone on the team does not have all the answers. And so bringing those people in really helps gain the confidence, and also really gains strength and credibility of the work by bringing in those additional perspectives.
I also went to a small liberal arts school for my undergrad, so I did not have opportunity to do research actually until my my graduate work during my master's, working with First Nations in British Columbia. And I feel like, during my master's and then onward, I've had really good mentors to provide support and learning, and the opportunity to have freedom to learn in the field and make mistakes and then learn and improve the next time. So I think learning to do research, the really important part for me has been having the opportunity to do it and define what I would like to do and carry it out myself.
Great, thank you all. Now for our second question, how can a student without prior research experience stand out in an application? Ben, would you like to start us off again?
Sure thing. So when I'm reading applications for SPUR, I'm looking for several things, and it varies depending on the project and what the project will entail as well. Perhaps the top thing I'm looking for is someone who is clearly read the project description and thought about it. And how it relates to their interests, their background, and talks about why they want to do research in a way that does more than just sort of list their accomplishments, but also talks about what they've taken away from those accomplishments. I don't think that prior research experience is necessary, especially because this is a program that's aiming to give students the opportunity to get their first research experiences. And I think that but I do think that there are experiences that you may have that could be applicable that are not research experiences that can be highlighted. So for instance, for one of the projects in my lab, we're doing a lot of image analysis of these plants that we filmed out in the field, where we want to follow pollinators or follow what the plants are doing over time. And so someone who comes in with a background where maybe they have some experience in computer science or machine learning or something like that through their coursework could be relevant. I also like to see, because my lab is a plant lab, I like to see folks who are enthusiastic about plants. And because those are the people who will more likely to stick around over time because they're enthusiastic about the main topic, not just of that particular project, but everything that we do in the lab. And so those types of things that show that there may be a unique skill that could be advantageous, or just someone who looks like they would be really excited about what the lab does over time. Those things can stand out in an application to me. And one other thing that I would say is that because I'm partly coming to this application from the perspective that whoever I bring in, it would be wonderful. It doesn't always work out this way, but it is wonderful when it does. It's wonderful if that person stayed in the lab for several years and eventually developed their own independent project. That students who are freshmen and sophomores or early on in their careers, they have greater potential for that. And so I also take that into consideration.
I think everything Ben said is great, so I'm not going to repeat some of his points. But going off the enthusiasm thing, I think writing an application that is specifically tailored to the lab and project that you're applying to is really important. It's kind of easy to write something very generic, but that won't really resonate with the professor. What I did is I read the most recent paper that the lab had published, or I kind of attempted to read it because I had to Google literally every other word, and it was this nitty-gritty genetics paper. And overall, I feel like I didn't really understand it, but it gave me a lot of questions to ask the professor and some points to bring up just in the application. And a good way to start off with that is to look at the discussion, and a lot of times they'll kind of allude to future experiments, and that can be a good jumping off point for questions. So yeah, I think just showing the professor that you are very passionate about what they specifically are doing, and also just highlighting your accomplishments and past experiences and how those could be relevant.
I wholeheartedly agree with both Ben and Claire. I like to think that you can teach most anything. You can't teach enthusiasm and passion, and you can't teach someone necessarily to take initiative. And I think some of those traits are really the most important. It doesn't matter if you know how to conduct research or not, as long as you have those traits, that you'll be a phenomenal contribution to the team.
I also agree with what has been shared so far. And I think one thing I would add is just, maybe give an example of prior experience that you have successfully learned something new, or demonstrate your initiative to learn something new. And also the ability to work independently with guidance is also an asset.
Great, thank you all for those wonderful answers. Our third question, What does mentorship look like in your lab? Do SPUR students in your lab primarily work with the faculty or postdoc/graduate students?
Yeah, so in my lab, generally the way that mentorship works is that the graduate students or postdocs, or sometimes senior undergraduates as well, will be the most direct mentor working with the SPUR student. It depends on who's really leading the project that the SPUR student is associated with. In that, occasionally I actually have a project where I work directly with SPUR students as well. But yeah, usually based on the project, the student becomes a member of that team, and with their mentor, develop the schedule for when they'll be in the lab and receive the training to do the research from that mentor and work with them over time. Students also are highly encouraged to come to our lab meetings, and that way they're interacting not just with their mentor, but also with everyone in the lab, whether they're postdocs, grad students, or undergraduates. And just so you can learn more about everything that we have going on in terms of various projects, such that, at the end of the semester, you can think about whether you would like to continue on working on that same project, or whether there's a different project you might want to get experience in.
So in general, for our lab, the SPUR student would work with a grad student or postdoc, especially if they're learning wet lab techniques for the first time. But once the student has a handle on that, sometimes they start leading their own project or doing experiments as part of a larger project. So it starts off kind of directly working side by side with someone, and then eventually working independently. And undergrads are also in our lab expected to go to lab meeting and present, which is really terrifying at first, but it actually builds a lot of skills and is beneficial overall. So, and in that time, you're especially interacting a lot with the professor, and sometimes students have one-on-one meetings with the professor.
So in our lab, in the waste lab, it's just me and Kate. And so you will be working predominantly with me as well as with the other SPUR students. And sometimes we have community partners that we'll bring in. So you might be working with them on occasion. And so the mentorship is really through periodic check-ins, a lot of independent work, but of course check-ins to just see how you're doing, both personally as well as on the project itself.
In our lab, the SPUR students work with the postdocs. There are opportunities to get involved in like our project-wide workshops or trainings. Last year we had a training at the herbarium with our various stakeholders that we were working with, and then we invited the SPUR students, and they got to meet people in our broader project and interact and learn new skills. But primarily it's with the postdocs, and we do check-ins through the phone or in person, and various check-ins through email too.
Great, thank you all for starting us off with answers to those questions. Our next question will come from Anne, asking, do freshmen apply to SPUR, and is it better to wait until sophomore year? I will start by answering the eligibility factor to that. So students must have completed one semester at UC Berkeley before they can apply to SPUR. So incoming fall freshmen will not be able to apply for this cycle of SPUR, but they will be eligible in spring. So to repeat the question, do many freshmen apply to SPUR, and is it better to wait till sophomore year? I'll go ahead and let our panelists answer the second part of the question.
I'm happy to take this. Yeah, so I do find that I get freshman applicants. I think it's a good policy that that you wait till after spending one semester at Berkeley, because in that first semester, it's really a time to get familiar with campus, get familiar with the pace and expectations in your coursework, as well as find your community, and then getting involved in research in your second semester when you have a better sense of how your time is going to be available and how to manage your time, I think is useful. And then, yeah, I look through freshman applications. I definitely have taken freshmen into the lab through SPUR, either in their first spring or in the summer after their first year. Yeah.
Adding on to that, I applied to some research projects, not through SPUR, but just hard emailing as a first semester freshman, and I got rejected from all of them. And in retrospect, I honestly think that was a good thing, because I really needed to just learn how to be in college before I started tacking on all these other responsibilities. And then in my application the next year, I was able to say, I took Bio 1B and I think ecology is really cool. And there was more substance to my application. And I think I knew more specifically what I wanted to do than I would have if I was a freshman.
Great, thank you. In similar vein, Luis is asking, are incoming transfer students allowed to apply to SPUR? And I can answer that part. Yes, incoming transfer students are allowed to apply for SPUR, since there's a bit of a condensed timeline, and they may have already had, experiences, research or otherwise, that have prepared them for SPUR. So we can, unless anybody has anything to add to that, you can also move on to the next question. Okay. So our next question is from Caleb. What is Rausser College's current guidelines for social distancing when it comes to people in wet labs concerning undergraduates?
So I can take this one. So currently, our labs are under what's called a density budget, in that we're only allowed to have a set number of people in the labs that have been set by a building and then campus-wide committee. And so what that actively looks like in my lab is that we're allowed to have up to 4 people at a time. And so because my lab is greater than 4 people, we end up doing that in shifts. And we, this summer, we have had, I have had 3 undergraduates who have had approval to come and do research as needed in the lab. One of them has been primarily computational, so he didn't end up coming in at all. But then the other 2 have been very instrumental in moving some of our plant-based projects forward. And so it's just a matter of making sure that everybody in the lab, both the undergraduates as well as everybody else, is keeping to the density budget to make sure that there's appropriate social distancing. And then we have a lab protocol for how to maintain good practices within the lab. So, that you're supposed to use disinfectant that is available in the lab to clean up both before and after you start doing work. And the buildings have signs up so that, for instance, corridors are one way so that you're unlikely to pass somebody, or less likely to pass someone in the hallway. Staircases are also either just up or just down, only one person in the elevator at a time. So there's various policies and safety measures that are in place that I think are pretty well working, and I feel comfortable with myself going in. So.
Claire, are you going into Rachel's Brem's wet lab? And do you have any additions to that?
So I only do computational work, so I don't go in, but we do have people in the wet lab, similarly to what Ben said. I think the way our new undergrad is working with our lab tech is they're at two benches that are far from each other and kind of trying to mirror each other, but it is kind of difficult because they aren't right next to each other, but they seem to be making it work.
Yeah, and I would also just add that because of the safety measures that have been put in place, it also affects, like, in terms of my thinking about the balance of how the projects we have going are going to be done. It affects sort of my thinking about, you know, can I have an undergrad be working on this entirely remotely? How often might the student need to be coming into lab? And you know, what does training that new student look like, either remotely or in lab, to ensure that the research is done well and safely? Yeah.
Great, thank you both. And our next question is from an anonymous student. When looking through the different projects and descriptions, the locations may vary by project. I just wanted to ask if those that are on campus will continue to be on campus, or if they will be transitioned to remote research. I think I can also answer this, and Ben, feel free to chime in on this. You know, this is an ever-evolving situation, as I think we're all learning and, you know, facing in many areas of our life. Currently, the projects that are listed as on campus on the website will be held on campus pending any more evolving situations.
Yeah, we're all trying to figure it out as we go. And, you know, I think that you know, there are certain projects where I know that they can be done entirely remotely. And then there are other projects where we have plants growing and someone has to be there with the plants. And so it's just a matter of you know, balancing experiments that are underway versus new experiments that can be started, and figuring out just how many students can be accommodated.
Great. Our next question is from Anish. How will research in a remote setting compare to the traditional on-campus research? I would like to push this question to Jessica and Megan, who are both having remote SPUR projects this semester.
Sure. So I would say we had SPUR students in the spring when COVID started, and we were able to keep working with the students remotely. So it didn't change our research plan too much, and they were able to complete their SPUR and get credits. So, you know, we'll just carry through with that experience and, you know, use those methods that we used for remote mentorship with this next round of SPUR. And, you know, we'll be checking in over the phone or Zoom and always there to answer emails promptly. But all the research that we're suggesting SPUR students they can do from their home.
Yeah, similar for our lab, everything will be done remotely. So although our research has taken a massive pivot because of COVID, we're starting to research some of the effects of a pandemic around waste and so forth, and everything can be done just with an internet connection.
Jessica, could you maybe go into a little bit more detail what remote research looks like, what it entails, you know, from the comfort of their home?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of it has been around things like policy analyses. So go in and look through what sort of health order mandates or zero waste goals, what sort of local or statewide policies are in place. So just kind of going through some of the governmental documents. Some of it has been cleaning data that we have already collected in the past. So it's going through spreadsheets or kind of either Excel or Google spreadsheets and cleaning that up so that we can then analyze it more efficiently and effectively. We've also been doing quite a lot of mapping. So GIS, and sorry if you can hear the dog in the background. We've been doing a lot of, so getting some of the visuals of data and different things like that.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Ariana. Would you recommend applying for as many projects as you can, i.e. 3 projects for SPUR, or applying to a few projects?
That was a few projects that you're most interested in.
I would say, you know, as a professor, I can only see which students have applied to which of my projects. So, you know, I often have multiple projects listed. So if you've applied to multiple of them, I can see that. But I have no idea what other projects you may have applied to. And so, you know, if you're looking at things outside my lab, I have no way to judge what those are or if they relate to my lab in any way. And, you know, I really am just focused on your application to my group. And I know that people do apply to multiple projects. And I think, you know, the point of the interviews that follow is to make sure that there's a good fit. Because of the timeline of SPUR, it's important for both the professor and the student to, you know, be respectful of each other's options and time. And so I also ask students who I've interviewed, you know, while I'm making my decision and going through all my interviews and you're doing all your interviews, you know, if you find another opportunity that is just like, that's the thing that you want to do and you get that opportunity, just let me know so I can take you out of the running as I consider other students. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it's totally fine to apply to multiple projects as long as you're writing like strong applications for each one. It's better to send 1 really good application than 3 that are just very generic. But yeah, I think casting a wide net as long as you're really interested in all the projects you're applying to is a good thing.
I also think it's fine to apply to multiple projects. And I would say, you know, during the interview process, you have an opportunity to learn more about the projects and the people that you'll be working with. So maybe through that process, you'll gain information that will really sell you on that position, or maybe you'll find out it's not for you. And then it's good to have other opportunities available.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Minihi. Could you give some suggestions to help incoming freshman students be better prepared for applying to SPUR in the spring cycle?
I would say maybe in the first semester, start to kind of think about what is interesting to you. Start to think about, are you enjoying more quantitative or qualitative data? Are you wanting to be more kind of in a wet lab or interviewing people? Are you more into policy or natural occurrences? Things like that. Just start to kind of look at those generalized big buckets of research, and so then when it comes to spring, when you come to applying, you can say, like, because of this, this, and this, I want to pursue it further. Like, these are my interests and I want to pursue further. And so just kind of start thinking it through in the fall.
So this maybe, I don't know how this applies in other departments, but I know for people who are interested in plant biology, my department offers one, or I think it's just a 1-unit course, maybe 2 units, I'm not sure, called PMB 20, where it's sort of an intro to plant biology at Berkeley, and as part of that, quite a few different faculty from the department come and they talk about the work that they do. And so it's a nice way to sort of, in one place, get a, quick blast of like all these different opportunities that are out there. Hear about all the cool things that are happening and figure out which ones really excite you.
If they're having freshman seminars this semester, those are similarly great for finding out about a topic. It's less of a overview of many topics and more of a focus on one, but I took one and it was really useful. And I forgot what I was gonna say. If you have GSIs who are in CNR, you can try to talk to them about their research and see if that's something that you're interested in, and ask them if there's openings for undergrads in their lab.
We've had SPUR applicants learn about our project through guest lectures. So if there's a guest lecture that comes into your classroom and you're really interested and enthused about the research they're talking about, you could look through the SPUR opportunities to see if that person's offering any, or just get in contact with them and see if they have plans for SPUR students.
Great, thank you all. Our next question is from Stacy. Do you have any advice for the interview process?
I think one point of advice that we didn't mention before was, just relax and let your personality show through, and, just let us know who you are and what your interests are, and how, they would relate to collaborating on the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I often ask students to just tell me about themselves, and then also ask them about, to tell me why they were interested in this project in particular. The other thing that I consider during the interview process is, as I talk about the project, because often I'll give a spiel about, what the motivating science behind the research is, and then what would be involved, is seeing that students have questions about that they are listening and processing that, and have questions about that conversation. Yeah.
In addition to the questions that kind of come up organically in the conversation with professors, I usually go to interviews with like 2 or 3 questions planned out, just in case I don't think of any questions in the moment. And I think a question that I never asked but should have, and I lucked out that everything was fine, was just asking like what mentorship is like specifically in that lab, and what your interactions with your mentors and the PI would be like, and just what the general lab culture is.
Something else I wanted to add is, think beforehand how what your schedule would allow, like how many hours you think you might be able to spend on your SPUR internship. In our lab, we try to accommodate student schedules and time, and sometimes if we're looking for 1 SPUR student, but then we have 2 that would be good and they have less time to dedicate, then we could divide it between 2. So I think thinking about your schedule beforehand and the is good information to share with the person that's interviewing you.
I don't know how relevant this is this semester, but when I was working in the wet lab, leaving big blocks of my schedule where I could go in like 3 hours at a time was really useful, because then you could kind of guarantee that you would get everything that you needed to done versus trying to squeeze everything into an hour between classes. So I always tried to kind of bunch my classes together and then have big chunks where I could just go into lab.
Yeah, I would echo that in that, and I think it is still relevant from the perspective of remote work, at least during the first semester when someone is actively being trained by a mentor, at least during that period of time when there's the mentor SPUR trainee relationship is particularly critical. You can there are some lab procedures, but that certainly take a couple hours, but then there are also just, I think once you get started with something, you'll really make a dent in it if you like put at least 2 hours into it versus just picking up bits here and there. And so when I interview students, at the end of the interview, I ask them to send me their schedules with the blocks of time marked out on them that they think that they want to dedicate to SPUR. And if I see that it's just like little bits here and there, then that makes it much less likely that I take them. The other reason I ask for that is to ensure that their schedules match up with the mentor's schedule, because if you're not available at the same time, then it's not going to work out, and it's totally not a personal thing. It's just like that's the logistical constraint. And so that also affects my decision making. But perhaps that'll be more flexible for remote work.
Great. Our next question is from Anne. What type of accomplishments or other specific traits / background experience would be good to highlight in the application if a student has no prior research experience?
So I think this was touched on a bit earlier, that showing examples of initiative or having done something, done a project. It may not be a research project, but like taken something independently or in leading a group to an exciting outcome is always something that I'm looking for in a resume, that there's some leadership or initiative that shows motivation and capacity. Those are things I'm looking for. I guess the other thing that that I would highlight is we talked about enthusiasm, and part of that is like the intellectual match, or the match between like what you're really interested in. And so that can show up as either like, I was in this class and we learned about this really cool thing, and when I saw your project it made me think about that in a new way, or made me think about your project in that light. Making those connections that reveal that you have a background where this is something that has really caught your attention, also tends to stand out to me. Oh, and this is also, again, just very specific to my lab. As I said earlier, people with like, because it's a plant lab, people who are, plantophiles tend to stick around longer. If there's, I definitely have, had many applications with stories about working in gardens with your parents, or working at a gardening store, or things like that. So that in some way often comes up in applications, and it definitely warms my heart a bit. So.
I completely agree with that. Just instead of plants, waste, especially since waste is not everyone's favorite topic. Showing that you do have a love for, the reduction of waste goes very far.
Specifically, like there's a lot of clubs on campus related to sustainability. So I think a way to show your interest in a subject is to join a club related to it, and then it puts more substance behind you just saying, oh, I'm really into this topic.
Great. Next question is from an anonymous student. Are there going to be strict hours during remote research, or will we be able to log on independently? Can people in other time zones still participate? I'm gonna give this to Jessica and Megan, who are doing remote projects.
Absolutely. This whole summer, we had people, I think in maybe 5 or 6 different time zones, and it worked just fine. We do need to find a way. We found it most beneficial is if there was a time occasionally for all of us to be on the same Zoom call. So that is important if we can find the hour, but it could even be at night or so forth. But whenever is convenient for you with regards to our lab in particular's work, it's completely fine to be in varying time zones.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think with our students, we give them the liberty to work whenever fits into their schedule. The only thing that needs to sync up is, when we're having check-in times, and usually that's, towards the beginning, maybe that's an hour, and then as you progress, maybe that's like 15 minutes. And I would say we have files like Google Drive or Box that we have community files that we're all working on, so I can see students' progress no matter what time they're doing it, and then we ask students to fill out their hours that they're working and what they've completed each time, so they have the liberty to work whenever they want and then report those hours and what they've accomplished.
Great, thank you both. Our next question is from Mo. Do we need to connect how certain classes we took have equipped us with knowledge/background for a particular project? Or do the researchers look through the transcript of classes and are they familiar with the course descriptions already?
I think it's great to make connection with your classes and the research that you'll be doing. I personally am not super familiar with the classes and their descriptions, so I think it would be an advantage to the applicant just to make that connection for the reader of their letter. And there's often times, during the interview where maybe we're looking for skills of like literature review or making annotated bibliographies, and then students realize that they've already done that in their coursework, and they have great examples to offer of their skills in those areas.
Great, thank you. Another question, and our last question from an anonymous student. In contrast to previous questions, are there disadvantages to applying as a senior? Would it be considered too late to be applying for research?
For my lab, absolutely not. We do, some of the work is just for the semester, so it doesn't matter if you're just able to be a participant for the semester. So it certainly would not hinder your application at all.
I think for my lab, generally, I'm less likely to take someone in the fall of their senior year or following. However, there are certain projects where that fall under the larger umbrella of the more general project descriptions that I have up for SPUR, where someone who either is coming in with an existing research experience or with, say, a set of skills that they've acquired in their classes that give them, say certain quantitative or computational skills that, students who have not taken the same coursework would not have. If I see a match like that, then that will, sort of elevate that student in my thinking.
I would say one advantage of applying as a senior that I've noticed is that their schedules are a little bit more open and flexible. So that is from somebody that's reviewing your application. If there's a position that requires more hours, then it could be an advantage to hire somebody that's a senior.
Great, thank you all. That was the last question we had time for today. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us. Thank you guys all so much for carving out time in your schedules to come here and help our students learn more about the wonderful research exposure program that we have here in our college. I also want to say that if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, to please email it to myself, Sarah Hamilton, the Fall and Spring SPUR coordinator at SPUR@berkeley.edu. Thank you, everyone.